welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Turn the Page. I'm your host today, Jen, and today I am joined by two incredible artists who have shared a really gorgeous film with me, filled with beautiful music and history and culture, all sorts of interesting things. So welcome to the show. Could I ask you to introduce yourselves and your project to us?
You bet. I'm Ted Drozdowski, and our project is The River, A Songwriter's Stories of the South, which is a film that, it's a very colorful, interesting, easy to watch, beautiful movie, but it also covers a lot of territory. It's a memoir, a cultural history. It's got live performance. It has original music. There's light art, aerial dancers. Does that sound like enough stuff to put in?
Yes, and I am Laurie Hoffma, and I am a co-producer of The River, A Songwriter's Stories of the South. And some of the main characters in the film is the band Coyote Motel. Coyote Motel is a five-piece band that is has been Ted's band for many years. And the bass player Sean Zwick and the drummer Kyra Currington have been with him for many years. And just before COVID, Luella joined, and she is a second singer as well as a guitar player. And then during COVID, I became the fifth member of the band. So I'm a relatively new addition. I bought a new instrument during COVID and then joined the band.
Yes, and what Laurie hasn't mentioned yet is that new instrument is a theremin. So we are essentially a roots music band with a theremin player.
Yeah, so that's one of the main players is Coyote Motel, and I am married to Ted. We've been married for more than 3 decades, and we had done a lot of projects together.
Yeah.
So after a certain amount of my sweat equity being put in, Ted made me a co-producer.
Yeah. Well, plus, in all fairness to Laurie, she was the person who was in charge of budget and a lot of other logistical stuff early on. And then during the editing process of the movie, which took, more than 450 hours, during the editing process of the movie, Laurie was invaluable in that as well. She would review the work that I did with the director, Richie Owens, and make suggestions. And it just made the film so much better that it was obvious that she was co-producing with me.
Right. So it's a bit of a long introduction, but that's sort of who we are and why we're both here today.
And we're based in Nashville, Tennessee.
Oh, great. And Nashville features very heavily sort of in the river. Could you tell us a little bit about your journey to the film? I'm really curious about what was the sort of the inception point or the seed from which it germinated. Was it the music? Was it the story? Or was it something else?
I think it was kind of this convergence. I've been a journalist and a musician and a cultural historian and a music historian for close to 40 years now. And during that entire process, I'm just omnivorous. I'm interested in all kinds of music, but I'm especially interested in American roots music with an especial passion for blues and other music that comes out of the South, other folk music forms out of the South. So I've been devouring that for decades. And I've had different bands for decades as well. I've had a band that was my previous band, Scissorman, was an homage to Mississippi Hill Country Blues. It was a 2-piece band. I've had psychedelic bands before, and then this band, Coyote Motel, started gestating. And I found myself in 2018 invited to participate by an aerial dance company, Suspended Gravity Circus, to participate in a festival show they were doing. And that show, where we also met the light artists who are involved in the film, Darling Lucifer Productions, we came out of those shows and they were really successful and a blast. And they said, well, we're open to collaboration if you want to do anything else. So the light bulb goes off. And it's like, what would I like to do? So in 2018, I started writing the script for this, originally as a stage production. But then COVID comes along, derails that. After COVID, Coyote Motel, my band, gets back together. It's sounding great. I'm so happy with it. But I'm thinking, what do we do now? Do we make just another independent band album or do something larger? And then the idea of a film arrived. and then that's where we dropped anchor and started rolling from. And all these people who had been collaborating with Suspended Gravity and Darling Lucifer Productions were into the idea of working on it. My friend Richie Owens is a talented director. I pulled Richie in, and suddenly we had all the people we needed. All we needed was money, materials, place, context.
I'll also say neither Ted nor I have made a film of any kind before. Ted and Richie had done a music video. So we knew we had Richie Owens as a friend and collaborator who had the skills, but that was it. And we did not know what was involved.
Yeah,
because we have learned a lot. It has been, from the beginning to the end, the script, and then the soundtrack, and then the rehearsals, and then the soundstage. And after the soundstage, the editing took almost a full year, because it was over 450 hours of editing.
Yeah.
And then once that was done, then there's all the post-production, as they say. So now we've been, film festivals. So it's been a very long cycle, and we had to learn everything every step of the way.
Yeah, everything from how to get film insurance for the shooting to just basically how to contextualize everything to get it viewable in the world. I mean, every bit of it has been learning. I've described it as hard learning. It's been like 3 years of very hard learning, because every time we turn a new page and there's something that we need to confront, we've never done it before. But I guess on one hand, that's kind of amazing, because we've actually been able to learn all this stuff as we've gone,
Right. And we made it. We did it. We finished.
Yep.
It's done. It's edited. It's out. So that's wonderful.
Yes. Yeah. And we're really excited about that. To actually get it to this point is pretty amazing. We've already done festivals and won a number of awards, but to actually get it to the point where it's going into international distribution is a big deal.
Yeah, it seems like you've come a really long way, and it really speaks to, I think, the collaborative nature of the project from the inception, because you have not only all of the different artists that you work with, but is it correct that it was crowdfunded too, to some degree? It seems like that sort of spirit of collaboration and support is sort of wound through the entire project.
It is. It's really all about that stuff. I've been lucky enough to, build enough friends and fans all around the world from touring and playing gigs with my bands through the years that we actually were able to have enough people who believed in what we were doing to sustain it, which is pretty amazing and gratifying.
Nice. So the film presents 10 songs, and it is interspersed with, as you've mentioned, some history, some memoir, a lot of really interesting cultural commentary on the South and music, and it's all blended together so beautifully. I hope this question makes sense, but did you choose the songs first, and did that dictate the writing of the content, or did you decide what themes you wanted to explore and that then dictated the song choice, if that makes sense?
Well, interestingly, I had the concept first, and then I looked at the songs. And then when I found the songs that I think worked best for the concept, I wrote the interstitial parts for those, where you basically introduce each song with a little story about some sort of cultural thing, whether it's a particular region or an individual. Like there's a song for a guy named Ernest Willis, who lived called The River Runs Forever, and Ernest lived for 40 years beneath the Memphis, Arkansas bridge. And I read a book called it came from Memphis. Oh no, Memphis Rent Party by Robert Gordon, the great chronicler of Memphis life, music, and culture. And in that book, he talked about Ernest, who, had a house on pontoons. When the water rose, he'd put it on the back of his pickup truck and haul it up the bank. When the water fell down, he'd bring it back down to the river. And he made his living under that bridge by catching fish and selling them to restaurants and pulling junk out of the river and reselling it. And I thought, okay, this is an amazing thing. So, I had to write about that as an individual.
Yeah, and that song was written for the movie. As Ted was putting the songs together and really writing a script, that story stuck with him, and he wrote it. And Luella ended up singing it. Again, she was a new member of the band, and it's one of our favorites. Also, the final song is called The River, and that is a song that was written years ago. I love that it's at the end of the film, and it's really a culmination. And the River song really is, in some ways, it encapsulates a lot of the whole movie. So that song had been written before COVID, and had been in the repertoire for a while, but it turned out to be a keystone kind of piece for the movie.
Yeah, and it's about the beauty of the region, but it's about the mysticism of rivers and also about the journey of life and spiritualism. And it's just, I think, a really interesting piece of music. And because it's influenced by North Mississippi Hill Country Blues, which is a big influence on me, and I count a lot of my friends and mentors out of that music, the whole thing's built on one chord. But it's not that easy to tell.
Not easy to tell. And it's a really is a beautiful sort of synthesis or like concluding paragraph, of the essay that the film has presented. Do you have a favorite, one that's like a particular darling of yours that's featured?
Laurie?
The two we mentioned are favorites. The River Runs Forever. Again, it's a beautiful song. I love Tupelo. Tupelo is the opening song, and Tupelo has just an energy to it, that I love. Do you have a favorite?
Yeah. Well, what's interesting too about the river at the end is that it's not a plotted film, but yet as you watch the film and its story does unfold, I think it accelerates and builds and builds and builds until finally you get to that climactic finale of the last few songs, So I really like that about it. But my two favorites are The River and The River Runs Forever. And The River Runs Forever was one of the songs that I wrote specifically for the film, as I had that concept when I couldn't find songs that necessarily fit it. Time to write more songs.
Also, after every song is kind of handled different visually. And one of the songs is about the steamboat gambler.
Oh yeah.
We should have clearly had a list of the songs in front of us.
Well, the song's called Long Distance Runner.
Long Distance Runner, but that song ends up with a beautiful vocal chorus of our singer and drummer singing together, and my glockenspiel. It's beautiful. It ends up beautiful, but also the visuals. There's a train running through it, and the stage moves, if you will. So that's one of the most visually interesting and kind of beautiful song mixes.
Yeah, and the end of that one kind of touches on the influence of Philip Glass. So when people ask what kind of music that Coyote Motel plays, I always describe it as cosmic roots music, because we take these elements of deeply rooted traditional music, but bring them into the present and then illuminate them with elements of psychedelia, or in the case of this, modern classical composition and other things like that. So it's sophisticated music sometimes, but not so much that it hurts.
I also a friend of ours, Anthony DeCurtis, wrote the liner notes for the soundtrack, which of course he also saw the film to do that. And what he said we love, he said it's a dream, the movie is a dream journey that teases out why and how music means so much to so many of us. And we're like, yeah, because for us, the music is where it starts, and the band, etc. But the stories are also about other people's music that impacted us. It's like this circle.
And it's interesting because to me, in that respect, it harkens on an era when music was really important. Like if you just saw A Complete Unknown, one of the things that I came away with from A Complete Unknown was the reminder that at one point music was absolutely a cultural linchpin and everybody was hanging on it. And I'm not saying everybody's hanging on this movie, but I do think that there are important things being said and shown in it. And I don't think that always happens now. So I'm really excited to be able to put our feet in that tradition and kind of move it forward a little bit.
Yeah, I think that kind of speaks to some of the interesting ways in which the themes of music and the imagery of the river play together. Because I think like both things ultimately like connect people, right? Like either physically or communally or spiritually or through friendship or what have you. I think there's really something interesting about the way that music relates to history too. And that's how like that is the main way that stories were passed down until we had, ways of setting them down. I have one question, which is, interweaving your own memories with the sort of the historical material and the music and all that. Did that teach you anything, or did it make you see anything different about your own narrative, inserting it into this context?
Well, it didn't necessarily make me see anything about myself that I wasn't aware of, but it did validate my own music for me more, if that makes sense. Because when you're an independent artist, you're often just trying to struggle to get heard. or to find a format to present yourself in, and I think that the value of the music resonated back to me and it's like, okay, yeah, this music, when it's assembled and looked at in this way, when it has the assistance of these visuals, when it's a kind of a beautiful, sprawling work that's able to touch people's hearts. And to me, that's so important. I think that people can come away from this movie being moved by it, which I think is really wonderful. It makes me feel good about myself.
Absolutely. And Laurie, did you say you learned the theremin specifically for this project, or was that just good timing before the
Yeah, we had talked about theremins on and off, but during COVID seemed a good time. We were home alone, and we both have jobs that could change to being working from home. So we were working from home, but not seeing a lot of other people, like many, many people in the world. And it seemed like a good time. And Ted and I got together while we were in that time, and Ted played guitar and I played the theremin, and it was awful. It was awful. Now, Ted did take the same theremin and he did some recording where he laid down a track on guitar, he laid down a track on theremin, he went out and got some chickens clucking in the backyard. They were not ours, they were our neighbors. It was well above the city limit, but whatever.
Right.
We got some chucking click, some clucking.
They were
cheap. we got so he sang. So he had 4 tracks and it sounded great because he mixed it with something. But as soon as the band practiced, the first time they got back, I let them practice by themselves. And then because they practice at the house, so they're always here, we have dinner. They practiced, and I had been throwing a little glockenspiel on some songs now and again and jumping up on stage for one song. But after their first practice, on the second practice, I put my theremin in there and I knew every song. I had known, the songs they were re-practicing, and because to play new gigs my theremin fit really well. So I feel in that it really fit well in that 5-piece milieu of a lot's going on. And my job is to find out where it fits and to not have it when it, not step on other sounds. And our sounds are a little weird. And there's sometimes I can't tell if it's me or Ted or Luella doing something, whether it be guitar or vocals or me. So that's sort of how that came about. Definitely, and at that point, again, the idea of a movie was just a time, wasn't, Ted had.
I don't even know if it existed.
Yeah, well, before COVID, we had thought about a stage play with the band, but
at that point, it was like kind of we're sounding good, but what the heck are we going to do now?
Yeah, so that's how it came about, and I love it, and it's great. But now I am an official member of the band. I play on every song.
Yes. And one thing I wanted to say about the music too is one of the reasons that I think the movie flows so well in kind of a literal sense is that Richie Owens, our director, is also a very talented musician. And Richie was aware of the rhythms of the songs and the rhythms of the visuals and cut everything to, the metronome in his mind as we were editing, which I think was really helpful.
Very interesting. I'd love to know more about the collaboration with the rest of your team, the production design and the lighting. You mentioned Darling Lucifer, which is a great name if you're going to do lighting. Like, how perfect is that? Could you talk about working with them and designing the visuals?
Yeah. Bonnie Aldcroft is the woman who founded Darling Lucifer Productions, and her husband Daniel, and she is amazing to work with. Very thoughtful. She uses a blend of live gel mixed, hot gel, Fillmore East kind of vibe, live projected visuals, as well as digital. And often the digital is her own creations digitized and then laid over her live creations. And she spent a long time. She wanted to know the 10 songs, the order of the songs. She wanted to know what costuming was going to be worn in terms of color. She talked to us first about what vibe we wanted and what colors went with that vibe. So very, very thoughtful. And it shows. And each of the 10 songs has a different element to it in terms of the light. And we think that she was great. And we do live with her sometimes, and she has other clients too, where she's at some pretty large
Yeah, she did the light design for Margot Price's last tour.
for Margot Price. She did some digitized for them to take on the road, but she also did some live production. So she is amazing to work with. And the next group was Suspended Gravity Circus, and Bailey Freeman and Paige Muirhead are two of the women who are in charge of that. It's a whole team of aerialists, usually somewhere around 15 members, but 5 of the women signed on to work on this project. And they started also, we had to do the soundtrack first because they needed to practice with the actual exact music. They couldn't, it has to be just right. So the soundtrack was finished, and then they started practicing. They were supposed to pick 3 songs, but they liked too many songs, and they were like, we have to do this, we have to. So they ended up on 5 songs, and I'm glad they did, because I feel it's a night, because we love it.
Yeah.
But it also meant that our soundstage time really had to be well used, because we had a soundstage that was large enough to have aerialists in front of the band, but we also often had them to the side on their own so that they could get more, a different vibe. But also it just took a long time to film, women dangling on. And there were sometimes we were behind them and they're like, don't look up. You guys, the band should look forward. Don't look up. And we're like, they're hanging from the ceiling.
And they're going to drop at a really high rate of speed. And it's going to be scary, but it's going to be amazing.
So it made the soundstage, but they also, ahead of time, they had it mapped out. So they knew that there were certain moves they wanted before they went into the, again, we had 3 days on a soundstage to make this happen. Before they did that, they knew that they needed this shot for this and this for that. So again, preparation, everyone was very prepared. And we are all, doing this, we're all artists on the side of our day jobs.
Yeah.
And so people brought a lot of love and purpose and intent, and we think it shows.
Well, for the soundstage shoot, there are about 20 artists, between filmmakers, the light artists, dancers, Coyote Motel on stage, in the soundstage. Some people have said, well, why are there aerial dancers and, psychedelic lights and stuff in this thing? And I'm like, well, because the movement and the colors bring an emotional depth that the words and music alone can't really convey. I just think it brings so much more enrichment to it, and just makes it so much more easily for people to respond or connect emotionally. And plus it's something you don't see every day.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. And I think that both the the dance aspects and the lighting have a sort of emotional arc of their own. Because the dancers move from the floor to the hoops to the silks, and I feel like it just has a really lovely structure to it. And yeah, it's a really gorgeous collaboration. Yeah, on the question of your 3 days of shooting and designing the production, something I feel that it does very well is it sort of splits the difference between you feel like you're watching something that was meant to be seen on film as a film, but you also feel like you have the intimacy of seeing music in person, if that makes sense. How do you create that sense of intimacy that you usually only get from being in a room with the musician you're listening to?
Yeah, I would have to give the credit to that to Richie, our director, who really just, he just killed it. This is actually the first feature film he's made. He has made music videos before. He has made demonstration films for musical instrument manufacturers. But having known him for a long time and having worked with him on the first video for a song called Still Among the Living, which is actually one of the extras on the DVD back in 2018, I just felt that I knew what he was capable of. Plus, he's a dear, dear friend. And I just know how immensely talented he is. And I had a lot of faith in him. And he basically did it. He was very responsive for where everything would be positioned, where the cameras would be focused at any given time, to make it feel like you're standing right there with us, when we played, which is something I really like too. I like being really close to bands when they play. That's why I like going to clubs, because it's easy to get close. And I like to hear that volume right off the stage as opposed to through the PA. And it just becomes this really immersive, more exciting experience for me anyway, and we wanted to give that experience to other people too.
I'd also like to say, Ted mentioned earlier that I did, Richie and Ted did the editing, and then they would come home and I would watch it and sort of give feedback. And
She was tough.
but one of the first things when it was the first song, and I'm seeing what I'm seeing, I'm like, we really have to establish the band in the first song. Everyone has to know who the drummer is, what Sean, the bass player, looks like, because as the film goes on and each song is different, you might see more or less of everybody. So you have, and once you've seen who the 5 people are and you know what they're doing, if you hear a glockenspiel in the background, you might be pretty sure that's probably me hitting the glockenspiel. You don't have to see it anymore. And there's a couple of songs, because of the different way we shot, there's one song that I'm hardly in, but I don't think anyone's going to notice that because they already know me. And so that's one of the things we did, especially in the first song, is establish who we are. And by accident, the songs were already arranged in the order, and then the aerialist chose 5 songs, and it turns out to be like the 4th, and then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or something like that. And so you kind of get to establish the band first, with a couple of songs, which I think, again, is a happy accident that worked out well, that you really know who we are.
Yeah,
And I think that helps.
I'd like to add one more thing about Richie too, is that he did this modest film with us as his first full-length film project. Now his next film project is a 7-figure budget movie, a 4-part series is being made for television called Rocky Mountain DNA, and it's about Dolly Parton and the Parton family. And he actually has already done the audio component of that, which was released. So not only is he making the movie, he produced the multi-album set, and that went to the top of the Americana charts when that came out a little while ago. So this is Richie. He's definitely a 5-star person to work with, and very colorful. He's from East Tennessee, and just has a great perspective. And like Laurie and me, a real blue collar, roll up the sleeves, get down to it and do the work mentality, because that's how you get through projects like this.
Yeah. That brings up what, if you get the DVD, there is a bonus material of Ted and Richie sitting together for about 15 minutes and talking about how they made the film. And one of the things that Richie said, because Ted was like, I can't believe we even did this at one point. And Richie said, well, in our defense, that's how Richie would talk. In our defense, we have a high tolerance for things like this. We are patient and methodical and relentless. Again, I appreciate that Richie said that, because I think it's true that we do have a high tolerance for being methodical and relentless, because we really did just keep doing what we needed to do to get the work done. And again, we were surrounded by so many people that really brought all of themselves to the project and had a lot of skills. So
And I'm a little amused that Richie used the word patient, because I sign on to all the rest of it, but I'm not as patient as I would like to be. But I present very patient, but inside my hair is on fire.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds like it required a lot of sort of relentless methodical nature, as you said, but also is there a role played by maintaining a spirit of play? Because you also all look like you're having so much fun. Yeah.
It was a blast, and it is great. And as a band, we have a lot of fun playing together too, thankfully. Because I've been in bands that haven't been that much fun. So much better to be in a band that's fun. We all enjoy what we're doing, and we all enjoy the adventure of it. It's nice. And we think we're doing something worthwhile as artists too. And I think that's important. If you have that kind of affirmation behind you, little things can just bounce off your back.
Well, this has been so lovely. Thank you so much for joining us. What is next for you? Are you working on anything at the moment? You're tired.
Yeah, we feel like we're in recovery from the film, because, as I mentioned, the hard learning thing, to move from a film that could be shown at festivals and in cinemas, we had to reformat the entire movie. We had to do all these additional files and things. We had to completely revamp the artwork. So it's been kind of like 3 years whenever we get done with our day job, we immediately plug into this other job. And it's been like 3 years of doing that constantly, So we're pretty nuts. And we're about to embark, since the release is June 10th, we're about to embark on a promotional campaign for the film now too. So the work still isn't over. So, next is actually just promoting the movie. But the band is starting to look at new songs again and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we're gonna go play a couple of little dates over the weekend. We've got some stuff going
Yep.
on. When we actually are able to when the movie is actually out there all the way, and Laurie and I aren't working frantically to promote it and do those other things, I'm hoping that the movie will help us do some shows. We'd love to go do some shows at cultural centers where we could show the film and talk about it and perform and, that sort of thing, So that would be,
Yes.
that's sort of a long-term or maybe a
a short-term.
medium-term goal.
I wouldn't trust us to not have some projects in our coming up soon.
Yeah, that
It's
too.
just that we've been hesitant to really plan any just yet until we get through the last stage of this. But we do always have we have a lot of interesting friends and people around us and a lot of connections. So
Yeah.
we're always coming up with new ideas.
And I'm always working also as sort of a journalist and as a cultural historian and a music fan. I'm always working to sort of promote other people. Like I was able to spearhead a couple of awards over the last few years for different people in the blues field, like Jimmy Duck Holmes and the Blue Front Cafe in Bentonia, Mississippi. I helped them get a Keeping the Blues Alive award. We helped get one this year for the Jefferson Street Sound Museum here. People who I think are keeping vital parts of American culture alive. And devoting their lives to it in a selfless way. I really try to shine a light on them. So that's always an ongoing mission.
Yep.
Well, that's great. That's all extremely praiseworthy and valuable work. Thank you so much for all that you do and for sharing this film with me and our patrons. I'm so excited to recommend it to them.
Well, cool. If anyone wants to see a snip, they can go to YouTube and get an eye full of the trailer and some other things there. There are a few clips
Yep.
from the movie.
CoyoteMotel.com is
Yeah,
pretty
that's
much
our-
where you find everything.
Yeah, coyotemotel.com is our website, and that's the nexus. And I certainly try keeping it up to date.
Yeah, patrons, you hear that? So you're going to go to coyotemotel.com to learn everything that you need. It releases June 10th, you said, right? June 10th?
Yes.
So
It'll be available for streaming. And so far, we know that Amazon has signed on. And there's another service I can't remember the name of. Our producer's rep is going to kill me. And also it's already available for pre-order as DVD if people want to, grab the whole enchilada and see the extras and all that stuff. And that's also on Amazon now.
perfect. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming to talk. Patrons, thank you for listening. It is now time to close this chapter. We'll see you next time.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.